we've taken it for granted. And now we don't just kill babies. In New Jersey, a baby can be born, left on a table until it starves to death. That is law in New Jersey right now. If you go to California, you can identify as one of 27 different things on a driver's license. Today I identify as a man telling you should identify as what you are. Amen. Period. But yet we live in that world where these things are happening, and we beat the humanity form to death. All these little rules, all these laws, all these things that are so anti-biblical that it's going to tear us up. And we've forgotten why we have a high view of life. There was a time in this country when abortion was a terrible, tragic thing. And now 3,000 a day. 3,000 abortions every single day in this country. Through Planned Parenthood, hospitals, and doctors that support it. We've also forgotten why we have a positive balance between laws and rules and government. We've not gotten ourselves in a lot of trouble. Here's the real thing. We had a civil war in the 1850s, late 1850s and 60s. When was the last time we had major things happen here like that? A lot of comments even in the congressional hearings. If you watch any of the impeachment hearings, the word Civil War was brought up 142 times. 142 times during the hearings on the vote. When was the last time you heard any congressman mention the word Civil War in a situation like that? 142 times mentioned just last week, on Thursday. We've forgotten that our freedoms have never led to serious chaos. I'm thankful for the military that we have. I'm thankful for the businesses that we have and the rights that we have. I'm thankful for the Bill of Rights. Those things have never led to chaos in this country as they would other places. But we have forgotten that we have a Christian consensus. Now, we can say all we want about life and culture and how things have changed. We have historical evidence that proves and says we were built on biblical foundations, morals, principles, and mores. We were built on those things, so we know that inevitably. But we have forgotten it. We live like we've forgotten it. In a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. And so we got to deal with some of those things. So where are we headed, literally? And here's the big deal. We have lost the fear of God. We have lost the fear of God in the church. We have lost the fear of God in the church world, which is why some of the headlines I'll show you later should concern you. We live in a world where what was once considered blatant sin is now accepted and glorified and praised. We have to be careful there, because we've lost that fear. So where are we headed? Well, first of all, there's two tracks. I believe there's two tracks that we walked on. It was the conservative swing in the early 1980s. Anybody here remember the moral majority? Jerry Falwell? All those things. Well, in the early 80s, abortions decreased. The only decade in history since Roe v. Wade where abortions decreased was the 1980s. And you got to think about that. The 1960s was what produced the young people in the 1980s. And yet the moral majority, some of the things going on, record number of Christians were elected to federal and local and state positions in the 1980s. It was a whole different time. I don't know if that's why music from the 80s is so popular or what. But the 80s was a whole different generation, a whole different decade in that regards. And then the door closes. So there are times when the door opens and good things begin to happen, and there's a time when the door closes, and I believe that we are there. I believe we're there. Because when a bill like H.R. 5 can be passed, and it says literally, Religious Liberties Act will not be recognized or acknowledged by this, we have to be concerned. I'll say this publicly. I've sent many emails to our legal counsel in the Assemblies of God wanting to know what they're going to do for us when if H.R. 5 passes, when it comes to bathrooms and stuff out here. I'm concerned about that. We can't say, oh, well, religiously we don't believe that I want this man going to the women's bathroom just because they're going to say, well, you can't say that anymore. I'm going to say it. Matter of fact, the reason we need to know is because you know what sedition is? Sedition is when I inspire you to do stuff against leading forces or law enforcement or government powers. I can prove to you the midwives in Exodus chapter 1 practiced sedition against Pharaoh. Because they were all on the same page. We got to watch this stuff. Sierra Coup was the Surgeon General under Ronald Reagan. They attacked him mercilessly because he was pro-life. Almost didn't get that position. Reagan stood by him, stood by him, stood by him. And liberals and a lot of other people came out and just tore him to pieces. But as Christians in this world, we stand absolutely opposed to the whole human system, whether it's liberals or conservatives in charge. You heard of sheep in wolves' clothing? Or wolves in sheep's clothing? Hey, there's a lot of liberals in conservative clothing in the political world that we've got to watch out for very, very carefully. So let's keep looking. Let's look at this. Terry Eastland said this in 1981. It's the style nowadays not only among the college-educated but also among many blue-collar workers to be economically conservative but socially and morally liberal. This translated means balance the budget but decriminalize marijuana and cocaine and let's have abortions on demand. If the liberalism of the 60s has a definite legacy as found in the far more liberalized and hedonistic lives, many Americans, including older Americans, and indeed many political conservatives, now lead. The age group in Florida that leads that state in AIDS are those 65 and above. That should say something. Those folks who were born and raised under the life that you marry one person, you stay committed all your life, you don't sleep around with anybody, and yet look, in Florida that's the culture. The most likely person to get AIDS in Florida is somebody 65 or above. What's that say about fidelity? What's that say about things? And here's what we're looking at. I said in 1981, many will remember this name, George Will. He wrote this in 1981. In the 1980 election, the electorate mandate probably was about 20% for conservatism and 80% for improved economic numbers, no matter how produced. What Terry Eastland said was parroted by George Will, and it came true. There's a new window that's open. I believe it's blowing against the faith of people. It should concern us as Christians. Several more nations have erupted in riots and chaos. It's now to 27. Things that are going on around the nations. Crazy things are happening. Morals are being mocked, laughed at, and insulted in a lot of ways. So let's look at what happened in Egypt. Exodus chapter 1. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah. And what's that in Hebrew? Is Shiphrah. You got to do that sound. Shiphrah, and the other was named Puah. And he said, when you are helping the Hebrew women to give birth, and see them upon the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall put him to death. But if it's a daughter, then they shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them, but they let the boys live. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said, why have you done this thing? Let the boys live. The midwife said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women. For they are vigorous, and they give birth before the midwife can get to them. So God was good to the midwives. And the people multiplied and became very mighty, because the midwives feared God. He established households for them. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, every son who is born you are to cast into the Nile, and every daughter you are to keep alive. Now you got to think about something. They lived under a king that did not know Joseph or remember him. Did not remember him or know him. But it did not stop their convictions, because somewhere along the way, somebody has still passed down righteousness and truth that these people honor. So we can say, well, there's a generation now not being raised in Sunday school and not knowing the truth. There's somebody in that family background that knows the truth, knows how they should live, knows how they should live in society, and is sharing their convictions. There was a generation, they did not know Joseph, but the generation before passed down those principles. That's why it's important that you folks keep telling somebody what's going on in your past and how Christ has transformed you and how the truth is being released. They risked their own lives and their family. And notice it said in that passage, because they feared God, God blessed their households. Most of the midwives were young, married women who had children of their own. Why? Well, because then they had to sometimes breastfeed those children that were born when the mothers couldn't do it. They had to be young women. And so here they go, and they get to the home. Woman's having a baby. They let the baby be born. And to stand there knowing that the king said, you killed these children. Pretty serious thing. Now, here's where we got to look at something. If you're depending on slave labor, why are you going to kill your slave labor? You ever think about that? It makes no sense, does it? You know, just a few months ago, or last month, or 2 months ago, I got to stand and walk in the sand and ride a camel where Moses and Joseph would have walked. I got to see those pyramids. I got to put my hand on those things and see them. Most historians believe the pyramids were there long before the Hebrews got there. A lot of stories are, well, they built this and they built that. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Most of the kings, most of the pharaohs also had a situation. If you look at the pyramids, the outer 8 layers have been taken off of them. You know why? Because Amenhotep and the other pharaohs decided they wanted to build walls around Cairo and aqueducts. And guess what they used? The outer layers of all of those pyramids. The middle pyramid in Giza, you see a little yellow at the top. That's because the guy that was made for it, he said, hey, leave that there. That's pretty. We want to leave that there just so people can know what it looked like before. So most of the Hebrews, and what did they use to make stone out of, or brick? Hay and straw, right? Let me tell you what, folks. The pyramids were not made of brick, made out of straw and water. So whatever it was, the whole idea that they were going to kill these babies that were boys was because they had other plans in mind. Just think about it. You're not going to kill your slave labor force, are you? They need a man to do that work. So a lot going on there in that regards. But the midwives drew the line in the sand and said, we will not cross it. We're going to let these babies be born. We're going to help them to grow. And that was the group that Moses led out of Egypt. Going to the promised land. So he was building up his people around the nations for the world. They were running the horses that practiced a very solid biblical principle, but all the time knowing they could die, because the king called them back and said, hey, why are you letting these babies be born? So in other words, they practiced civil disobedience and sedition. Because when one said, we're going to do this, told the others how to do it, guess what? Sedition is when you pass on to somebody else a principle that's in violation of the government. Every midwife that God said he loved because they feared him and honored because of that, practiced civil disobedience and sedition by what they did in that regards. So, Matthew 22:21. They said to him, well, Caesar's. He said, who's this coin? Who should this coin belong to? Well, Caesar. He says, we'll give to Caesar what's Caesar's and to God what is God's. Now, here's what he did not say. He did not say God and Caesar. He said God over Caesar. That's the principle we got to get. Hebrews 13 says, submit to the Romans 13 says, submit to the governing authorities, right? Until when? Until those governing authorities make rules and policies that violate God's laws and God's word. Peter said, honor civil authority, but fear God. How can we make a difference in our culture and our society if we don't fear God? You cannot have civil disobedience. Yeah, you can email your senator. You can call your congressman. whether you fear God or not, just because you're bothered by a law or a bill. You may storm, you may protest in Washington, you may march in Washington, D.C. But guess what? Unless you really fear God, you won't go any further. Right? When government says, all you people that are standing up for this law and this bill, stand down or we're going to shoot you. We're going to turn the water hoses on you. That's when you find out if you really fear God. This book I've read, hear carefully what he says. The officials of the Roman Empire in times of persecution sought to force the Christians to sacrifice, not to heathen gods, but to the genius of the emperor and the force of the city of Rome. And at the times, the Christians' refusal was looked upon not as a religious, but a political offense. H.R. 5 says that if you got Religious Liberties Act does not apply to anything about same-sex marriages, about the employment of someone who's gay or lesbian in a church setting. It says your religious liberties don't mean anything if you don't want your daughter showering in the same shower room at school as the guys' swim team. It's in the act. I've showed it to you. In other words, they're going to tell you you can have no religious liberty, and if you deny this or don't want to do it, it's a political offense. Guess what our government's practicing in H.R. 5? They're practicing what Rome did. And this guy makes it clear. When the government wanted to persecute Christians in Rome, that's what they did. They said, oh, you offer sacrifice to the Caesar. And they said, we can't do that. Oh, that's not. We're religious. We're Christians. Doesn't matter. That's a political offense. I want you to understand, this guy nails it. That's what our government just did in H.R. 5. Well, that's what the leaders, that's what the 240 Democrats in the House did when they passed this bill through. They basically said, we don't care about your religious rights or liberties. All we care about is that's a political offense. And that's how we're going to get you. That's where we are right now. Bottom line is at a certain point, not with the right, but the duty to disobey the state. There will come a time, oh, thank you. You keep getting stuff. If I keep this up, man, I like my steak well done. And lots of sour cream on the baked potato. But are you seeing this, folks? In our world right now, they are pushing us into a corner. And if you've not read H.R. 5 lately, I encourage you to go back and look at it. Okay? Here's some history. Tyndale said the laws are above the state. Bunyan wrote Pilgrim's Progress in jail, where he spent 12 years for preaching without a license. Netherlands revolted against the kings in 1574. Sweden turned against the state in 1527. Denmark did the same in 1536. Catholic armies fought Protestant armies for 30 years. Back and forth. And then the German Reformation. When that happened, those guys had done what they did. Switzerland had a guy named, I got to see Zwingli's helmet and his sword in the Slogenhofen Museum in someplace in Switzerland. John Knox led a movement that went against the French. And I like what he said. The ruler of the king is lieutenant to one whose eyes watch upon him. See, these guys had it. They put their life on the line. Tyndale was killed for standing up against what he did. They tried to kill Bunyan in prison too, in that regards. So what's different today? Well, every place there's been Reformation, there was also religious non-compliance with civil disobedience at times got violent. Sam Rutherford called it Lex Rex. The law is king. Anybody ever heard the divine right of kings? England practiced it. Matter of fact, you did not want the king to know you were marrying your wife that day, because he could show up and say, hey, divine right of kings, thou didn't have first time with your wife other than you. That happened. That really happened, folks. Divine right of kings. They can say, I'm the king, and that's all that matters. They can rule as God's appointed, and nobody can do anything about it. And Rutherford said, the government was ordained by God, but divine tyranny is one without the sanctions of God. Rutherford stood up and he said, you kings cannot do this or that because you are not God, although you think you are. And if we're not careful, folks, in any government, guess what eventually happens? The leadership begins to think they are God. And so when H.R. 5 was pushed by 240 Democrats in Congress, who put in there that the Religious Liberties Act did not comply with any of these things, they were making themselves out to be God. And telling church people, we don't care what you think. We don't care about your morals or your background or your background. We don't care at all. So the difference today is this. The entire structure is being attacked by the government itself, by culture, by political parties, by the nations. That's where we are in today's world. John Locke said a fallen world will always require force. We have to differentiate between legitimate and justified use of force and over-the-top violence. In other words, folks, I'm telling you as a church, there's going to come a time we have to decide what are we going to do or not do. And how are we going to do it. And next week I got a lot of those things laid out for us to look at. But it's coming to that. And isn't it funny that a bathroom is going to be the first thing that it comes to? That's where we are. However, before force is used, there has to be protest, nonviolent resistance. You need to call your senator, your congressman, your local official. Let the governors in the race, you need to vote on Tuesday. I hear one of you complain about anything in government, I will ask you, did you vote Tuesday? If you say no, I will slap you. And use pressure points and do things you never dreamed possible. You know there's a pressure point that makes you use the bathroom immediately? Well, my dad would take me to the bars when I was a kid, and guys would start getting a hand, had a sister as a bartender, and all this stuff is videotaped so I could prove it. My sister would say, Dana, can you take care of Mr. So-and-so over there? Yeah. Walk up to the drunk guy who's yelling and screaming and go, hey. Do this in front of his face, hit a pressure point, he wets his pants and he goes, wait a minute, fight's over, I guess. Am I being silly? No, I'm telling you what, you need to vote, folks. It's an important election. And if you struggle with one major person to vote for or not, pray. Ask the Lord to help you, okay? And I know there are some who will say, well, I don't know if I can vote for this office or not. Okay. Walk into that precinct and try to vote. Try to vote for that specific governor or whatever the situation is. But vote. 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 Don't just say, well, I'm just not going to show up at all. Because that's bad.
Amen.
That's really bad. One of the things about democracy that we have here is you can vote. You say, well, my vote won't count. In the last 25 years in this country, $3,212 elections have been determined by 2 votes or less. 3,212 in this country. So don't tell me your vote doesn't count. 20 years. In the last 20 years, 3,212 elections. That may be a city council vote. Might be president, who knows? The 3,212 elections were determined by 2 votes or less. You need to vote, okay? You need to vote. Get out there and do it. Now let me show you some things. Pray for your leaders for discernment with reckless abandon. Do that, do that, do that. Watch what's happening in government. In Alabama, the voters said we do not want abortion in our state. And a federal judge said, I don't care what you voters want. You're going to have it. Too bad. Remember Proposition 8 in California 12 years ago? When the voters said we do not want abortion, and a federal judge, 9th District Circuit Court said, you're going to have it anyway. You know what we need to do in Kentucky? If a federal district court judge would say what we voted doesn't matter, we should surround that man's house day and night. Yell, scream, make all sorts of noise. Why? Because he basically said your vote didn't count. I'm bothered by that personally. That's why I'm so bothered by the impeachment stuff that's going on. Carefully watch what's happening in culture. ALA.org is the American Librarian Association. My daughter's getting her master's from UK in library science. Do you know that we got people dressing up as drag queens and reading to your kids in public libraries? Lexington, Louisville, Bowling Green. Well, look at this next one. Drag queen flashes children during story hour. You can see the picture. Blocked out, don't worry. I'll tell you what, if I took my kid to be read to by a guy who's 19 or 20 wearing orange hair and a skirt, and he spreads his legs and he's not wearing underwear, they would need an ambulance and police. First of all, if I say I'm going to take my kids to see a drag queen, you smack me. What are they trying to say? This is going on in culture right here, right now. And public libraries are just, oh, we know these people come in, and these men will dress up as women, and they can read to these kids. It's a great thing. And then you realize the books they're reading are so out of whack with the Bible and with family values, we should be concerned. Watch what's happening in the church. This just came out on Thursday. Church attendance is now only done by 20% of people. In other words, only 20% of church people are regular in attendance. Let me tell you something else. American Family Association brought this up a couple of years ago. Do you realize that most of the people that vote in America, up until about 20 years ago, were Christians? And when church attendance was 60%, guess what the voting rate was? 60%. How many elections have been lost or won because Christians showed up or didn't? She's telling you right now. That little girl right there just said, vote! Show up Tuesday and vote! But she understands the world that we vote on today will impact her world when she gets bigger. Time Magazine just compiled a list of the churches that now support and endorse gay marriage. 2 years ago, 4 mainline denominations in this country supported gay marriage. Now it's 16. Why should that bother us? A couple years ago, when gay marriage got passed by the state, we made an amendment to our Constitution and bylaws. It's in there. And it says we will not allow announcements in our bulletin, use of our building, both the sanctuary and the multipurpose room, for any marriages like that. Is it because are we being homophobic, or are we being mean? No. We believe the Bible says a marriage between a man and a woman. Period. That's it. And some people say, oh, well, Pat, you don't need to do that. Really? Have you read H.R. 5? That says your Religious Liberties Act doesn't apply. We do have one legal advantage here. It's in our bylaws. It's in our Constitution and bylaws. We will not support that sort of thing in this building. And don't think people haven't called and asked us about that. I've personally told 3 people, no. We'll get a lawyer. Get a lawyer, sue us. I don't care. We're not going to let a marriage between 2 women or 2 men or 5 guys or 10 women in our church. In other words, folks, that term legal counsel is a whole different creature today. And I will say publicly, I've asked our officials, and someone said, I want to know. I emailed our superintendent, Doug Clay, and said, I need to know what we're going to do. I told him what I was going to do. And people say, oh, I know what you're going to say. Look, I'm telling you what, folks. I do not want a man in the women's bathroom out there. I do not want that. HR 5 passes. We got to figure out how to deal with that. We have 2 single-stall bathrooms in the back. There's probably going to be a fisticuff or a fight out in the front yard, out in the foyer. What do we do when the government says, you cannot say no? I'm saying no. And if my board members jump in, guess what? They just committed sedition with me. How did we get here? How in the world did we get here? Because somebody didn't speak up enough 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 5 days ago. And someone didn't go to the voting booth. And I pray, you know who I pray for most of all in the house? I pray for Nancy Pelosi. And I will tell you, I pray some pretty strong things. I pray for that woman a lot. Do I like her as a human being? No, I don't. Do I respect her as a congressman? No, I don't. But the Bible tells me to pray for her. And so I do. You always pray nice things? No, I don't. I pray, God, I pray you bring that, let that lady have the worst nightmare she's ever had. Because if she's Catholic, she's been in church before. I don't know exactly what she's heard. But she ought to know that life is precious. And I'm thankful that a cardinal told Joe Biden, I'm not serving you communion. How can I? When you don't respect life. I support that. Now, am I going to stand up here and say, you've never heard me say, go kill people, go hurt people, but you're going to hear me say this. You better stand up for the biblical values and write somebody and call somebody and talk to somebody. I can be angry and not sin. I can share my opinions and my beliefs any day of the week. Facebook is my pulpit too. So it's become. I've had 14 posts not allowed to be posted on Facebook because I might offend somebody. Well, too bad! If I can't post it on Facebook, I'm going to say it to you folks. And you tell somebody else what I said, offend them, I don't care. We're at that place in history and in culture where we better get ready for the fight. It's coming. If my ushers would come back up the front, we've got communion. I'm going to challenge you folks to come up here today, and we're going to take communion in front as a group. And while we're taking, I want you to be thinking about leaders. Not just your president, not just your congressman, not just the cultural things that are going on. I'm not going to have any drag queen on in this platform reading books to my kids or your kids. And I hope you're okay with that. Go begin to come, folks. Grab your communion element and just stand for a moment. You see, the world in which Jesus was born and raised said Caesar's God. So when the people and the Pharisees said to Jesus, well, who's this coin belong to? He said, well, Caesar. Give to Caesar what's Caesar, and to God what's God's. Jesus was saying, pay your taxes, but you better fear me. You better do what I've called you to do. And in that world in which we live right now, we have got to do what God's called us to do. We got to stand up. You know how every day there's like a certain day? This is siblings day, and this is, cardboard day, and people who like to sing off key. I mean, there are so many, there's just some flat out dumb stuff out there that people think is great. After HR 5 passes, what else will happen? There will come a day, there's already 17 congressmen who have pushed legislation that will recognize certain gay and homosexual and lesbian people they want a day for them. They can do what they want with that. That's okay. This is America. Was Martin Luther King a great guy? He did great things for minorities, great things for civil. My father, in 1960, had a business in Terrell, Indiana. He hired a black guy, a Puerto Rican guy, 2 white guys, and he paid them all the same rate. And for that, they burned my dad's store down. Burned my dad's store down. So my dad said, all right, I'm going to... He marched with Martin Luther King. I'm proud of that. My dad marched with Martin Luther King in Washington, D.C. I'm proud of that. But I also know that Martin Luther King was a pretty immoral person. Look at the tapes. Look at the information, FBI, stuff like that. Sorry, Charmaine. Not everybody, anybody here perfect? Or should we strive to be better? Should we strive to be the kind of people God's called us to be? That's what it's about. And if we continue to live like Christians, like we're supposed to, and do what the Word of God, we will have chaos knock on our door. I promise you, you'll see it. I will see it. There will be times when we have to protest. Times when we have to tell the government, no. If H.R. 5 passes the Senate, and the President vetoes it, which he said he would, and he goes back to the House and they pass it and they override the veto, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to say no. I will have those doors open when I preach, and board members out there to tell me, you got some idiot going to the girls' bathroom. You see, even if I say, Levi, go get that guy, he's going to say, I can't, because the law says it's fine. Remember how Nehemiah beat and pulled the hair out of people? It's in there, folks. If I say, remember that point, I'll be right back, and you see me walk out the door, I will not be afraid to go to jail. I will grab that guy out of the girl's bathroom. I don't care if they're wearing a dress. Pastor Dana, that's where we're coming, folks. That's where we're coming to. Where we can't protect the people in our church, our kids, our young girls, from perverts, which is what they are. Unfortunately, Michael, we can't just shoot them. A lot of things we're going to want to do. We have to do what the Word tells us to do. And there's coming a day when we will have to say no. And you're going to have to draw a line and stand behind it or step across it. And next week, I'm going to talk a whole lot about here's what we can do and what we can't do. I'm going to have some scenarios. That's going to be part of next week. So that should be really exciting and very practical. Most important thing is my faith and my commitment to Jesus. And I've got to make sure everything I say and do in this pulpit, in my home, out there driving, and in the world, it's got to glorify Christ. That's why He came. He said, my body's broken for you, so that by my stripes you're healed. He cares about our physical. He cares about us when we're in prison, because we got thrown there because we would not accept a government mandate. There's 3 million Christians in prisons in North Korea right now. If you bought Christmas lights in the last 50 years, you probably bought lights that were made by Christian prisoners. So every time you string your lights at Christmas, pray for the people that made them. Pray for the people that are there because they can't have faith in Christ out loud in public. They're in prison. If our president is impeached, who are the people that make the loudest noise about abortion in this country? It's us. Who are the people that make the loudest noise about H.R. 5? It's us. If they can take a president out, Alexander Hamilton said in the Federalist Papers, and I quote, a partisan attempt to remove a president is the worst thing this country can have happen. The bipartisan effort says, well, these some of the Republicans didn't want to do that. That should concern us. Because if they can remove a president, what else can they do? Let's take back everything he's done, every judge he's put in, every Supreme Court judge. Hey, look. You realize that Schiff already has a statement, a bill ready to go before the House that says any appointments by President Trump after impeachment have to be removed from office? That's 2 Supreme Court justices. That's 153 federal court justices. Any legislation or regulation he's put in place. I hope it bothers you as much as it did me. I've sent that man some crappy little emails myself too. Not use very safe language because I'm fed up with what I see in government. Tired of seeing elections overturned because the judge says, I don't care what the people said. That should bother us. So, the body that you want to be healed, make it beat on by a police stick because you're there protesting. Maybe blood of your own spilled because you stand up for what's right, what's biblical. Are you ready to do that? For the right reasons and for the right way. I'm talking to the body. It's easy. I've heard Bill say, a lot of people say that, and I understand that. We're about to find out what we're really made of in this country, folks. So look at that bread in your hand and realize it represents a broken body that may one day be yours because you stood up for biblical values. Lord, thank you for the body. The bread is broken. You give us the courage to stand when we need to stand for your glory and for what's right. But help us understand this is not just a petty message just given for the fun of it. This is serious stuff. And one day we'll face it. And one day the church in the tribulation will face it. So heal those as we take it. Remind us of what you've done for us. And thank you for the stand you took. Because God, when you hung on the cross, you did it in spite of the enemy's plans or purpose. You did it for me so I could be healed. We thank you for the bread. Let's partake together. You took that cup and said, in the same way, this cup is a new covenant. He has given us all the strength, courage that we need to face anything we face in life. This blood means I can stand and face a firing squad. 4.5 million Christians have died this year so far in the Middle East. 4.5 million Christians. In Riyadh today, 375 believers. 375 believers, most of whom were pastors, were killed today by the government. And their blood was spilled because they loved it. 4.5 million believers have been killed this year alone around the world. Don't think it's not coming here. Don't try to fool yourself. Oh, it'll never happen here. It will. It's coming. And when you stand up and tell a guy he can't use the bathroom, even though he identifies as a woman, there'll be a time when weapons are drawn in churches because of what people want us to let them do. There'll come a time when they will spit on our convictions, put us in prison for them. The reason Jesus said when you stand before kings, don't worry about what to say. The Holy Spirit will give you the words to say. And that wasn't just about tribulation times he was talking about. There'll come a time when this blood has to mean a whole lot more to us than it does. Jesus, help us to stand strong. You died in my place and the place of those that are here, so that our lives could be spent glorifying you. And I pray that we will stand strong for your glory. We'll be the men and women of God you called us to be. That we will say no and stand on it. We'll not be afraid, Lord, even give and surrender our lives to the call of God on our lives. May we drink this today with a whole lot better grip on the blood that was spilled for us. He gave us life. I still will. Protect again. There's an early church father whose name was Tertullian. And he made the statement that the blood of Christian is seed. When the church was scattered, Stephen was stoned, the church grew. The largest church on the planet is in Iran. Iran, of all places. Second fastest growing church on the planet right now, Venezuela. In the midst of everything going on crazy, God's moving the gospel. So folks, don't just get ready for what's happening. Be praying for the nations. Be praying for things, situations that are going on. Help us to make a difference around the world. Next week, a lot more practical information on what we can